Hi and welcome to Yamaha BackStage, our regular magazine feature and video programme for Yamaha Club. Coming up in today's show, Richard and I go back to basics as we explore some of our fabulous instruments just as they come out of the box. Also coming up in today's show, Richard finds a present.
And I reveal his true identity.
Welcome to Yamaha BackStage. Hi and welcome to this edition of Yamaha BackStage. As usual, we've got a packed show and today we're going to take you on a tour of some of our wonderful instruments, just as you take them out of the box. We're going to demystify just how to get started and get some great sound from your keyboard or Clavinova, just as you switch it on. You know, when we're out and about visiting stores and events, showing people our brand new instruments, a lot of people ask us, how did you do that? My instrument doesn't sound like that. I need to download this and I need to download that.
I know, yeah.
Can I use registrations from my Genos on my Tyros and from my Tyros on my Genos? Well, first of all, whoa. Yeah. Let's just slow down, take a breath, and let's actually take a closer look at what these incredible instruments can do right from the get-go.
Oh, I've been looking forward so much to this episode because there's so much that we can show you. Now, of course, we can't have every instrument available, so we've chosen 3 for today's episode. We have, of course, the mighty Genos, alongside our brand new baby Genos, the PSR SX900, and our fabulous flagship Clavinova, the CVP 809. Now, as Paul said, let's slow right down and take a closer look, because there's really lots of magic things that we can do, all without the need for importing or downloading anything. Now, don't get me wrong, if you want to do that, then you can jump in and fill your boots. Our instruments are tremendously capable, and of course we'll take a more in-depth look at all the features and operations in future editions of BackStage. But for now, let's just go back to basics. In fact, let's go right back to the beginning and take an instrument out of the box.
So Richard, this is one of the, I think one of the great parts of Yamaha BackStage, because we're going to actually have a look at some of our instruments and you're going to give us some real great nuggets of information. Now, as we said right at the beginning, we're going to go right back to the basics and right back to the start. Because I think a lot of our customers, you know, when we're out and about, they do ask us, how do you get it to sound like that? Yeah. And a lot of people want to kind of run before they can walk. So we're going to just slow it down, take it back to basics. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is something called voices. Now, to a lot of people, voices means voice.
Yes.
So let's just demystify the confusion there, because when we say voice, we mean sound.
A sound.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's not just a sound. This is one of the reasons why we do call it a voice. And I know for lots of people, as Paul said, you do think of this sort of voice as being a human voice. We call these voices simply because it's not just the raw sound. That's really important, because if it was just the raw sound, and when you press the button and chose, let's say, a trumpet, you press the button, you've got a trumpet, but then we have to think about, would there be any effects on that trumpet? Where would he play? You know, is it a jazz trumpet that will be played in a nightclub? Yeah. In which case it's quite a tight sound. Yeah. Is it a movie trumpet where you've got a big sound stage and lots of ambience? Yeah. Is it a muted trumpet? Yeah. So it's got the
mute. And what type of mute?
And what type of mute,
yeah.
and all of these things. You know how bright it is. For piano, again, where what sort of place is it in a jazz club? Is it on a concert stage? Strings. Guitar. How many different types of guitar are there? It could be classical, it could be acoustic folk, it could be steel strung, it could be some really screaming, distorted, heavy rock guitar.
We're not going to do any of those, though, are we?
Oh, I might do. I like a bit of bombast every now and again.
So it's not just about the sound itself. It's about how we make that sound, how the musician
that's the important thing. So you get the raw sound. That's there. But on top of that, and wrapped around that sound, is the thing that polishes the sound and makes
the magic on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the things that always happens when you choose a sound, choose a voice on a Yamaha instrument, is it's gone through lots of processes actually before you hear it. So yes, it is the raw sound, but then it's gone through all the different effects and make it sound as good as it possibly can be. But one of the other things that we do, which is really important, is it then goes through a process which we call voice set. And all of this is done for you before you select the instrument. But that voice set means that there's no volume discrepancy. For example, you could have a pan flute. Now, a real pan flute, if you played it, and then let's say you had a big rock guitar going through something like this, the rock guitar is going to be a lot louder.
Yes.
But if you want to go from a pan flute to a rock guitar and a piece of music, the last thing that you want to do is then having to make a grab for the volume control, because it's not consistent.
Yes.
So that's all done for you as well.
Okay.
So lots of this is it's the sound, but what makes the voice is all the processes that go together to make that final polished thing.
So there's a lot more to the term voices than actually meets the eye.
Absolutely.
So you've chosen to show us this time on Genos, because as we said, we've chosen three instruments. We've got Genos, we've got PSR SX 900, and we've got CVP 8 or 9. So you're going to take us through some voices on Genos.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go.
There's nothing more exciting than your first encounter with a new keyboard. Taking it out of the box and actually even better than it being out of the box, they've given me a ribbon with this, and it's not even my birthday. So that's very lovely. Let me just pop that over there somewhere. Over there somewhere. It was a bit like it being at a wedding. Sort of throwing it, and the whoever catches it is going to be married next. I think whoever's just caught that is going to be doing the next video. Anyway, let's choose a voice on board this Genos. And to do that, we actually look at the main screen. All the information that you really ever need on these instruments is on this big central screen. The first thing we see on the screen on Genos is a selection of voices across the middle of the keyboard. The voices will be coloured in blue, and this is a really big advantage of the colour screen on Genos, is the fact that you basically just look at anything that is blue are the voices. And in the first instance, you'll see that we have CFX Concert Grand selected. It's always the case when you turn it on, it always turns on as a piano. So to change sound, to change a voice, let's first of all just tap the photograph of the piano in the middle of the screen. We now see the piano section and the first 10 piano sounds. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see P1, P2 and P3. That tells us there's more pages of pianos. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see various voice categories. Things like pianos, electric pianos, acoustics and electric guitars, choirs, woodwind, brass, synths, etc. Let's, as an experiment, choose an acoustic guitar. So down the left hand side of the screen, press A dot guitar. And then we see the first 10 acoustic guitars on screen. Simply select the one that you'd like to listen to. Genos actually allows us to mix 3 sounds together using the part select buttons on the right hand side of the panel. Let's, for example, here start with the CFX Concert Grand. And in right 2, let's choose another electric piano sound to mix them together. To turn that second voice on, we can either press the on button on the screen or the hardware button on the right hand side of the keyboard in the part select area. And what a nice difference that makes. But we can go further. By adding a third voice, we can bring another texture into the sound and give us this really luxurious sound that Genos is renowned for. In this particular case, we'll take one of the pad voices. Now the pad voices do exactly what you would imagine. They pad the sound out. They're not solo voices, but they pad the sound out. Make this nice sort of warm sound underneath something else. Works really well here with the piano and the electric piano. What a big warm sound. And of course we could mix strings and horns and woodwind together to make a big orchestral sound. We could mix saxes and brass and trumpets together to make a big band sound. And we'll do much more of that in future times. Here on PSR SX900, the screen layout is exactly the same as on Genos. So therefore the method of choosing a voice is identical to the one that's just been shown on our Genos instrument. In addition, on PSR SX900, there are still hardware buttons for the voice categories towards the right hand side of the panel. You can use these as well to choose a voice should you wish. Here on this magnificent CVP 809 GP, things are quite different when we select a voice. The reason for this is because this is much more than just a Genos in a posh frock. Actually what we have here is all the sounds that we have from Genos, but combined with the very best piano, organ, harpsichord, strings and other voices from our high-end premium CLP classical Clavinovas. This means that there's many more voices to choose from on this CVP 809 than there are on Genos, even on Genos. And in that way, we make the voices into slightly different categories. So choosing a voice on CVP 809 is a little bit different. But we make things really easy for the piano players. For the piano players who are coming to this, maybe from an acoustic background or from a very basic digital piano, we have a feature called Piano Room. Piano Room does basically exactly what it says on the tin. It's a selection of pianos that you simply choose from the screen. When you're in Piano Room, none of the panel buttons work. They're all turned off. It's fantastic for just sitting and noodling away on piano, for practice, or whatever you may wish to do on your Clavinova. So let's first of all take a look at piano room. We enter piano room simply by selecting and pressing the piano room button on the right hand side of the CVP Clavinova control panel. Upon entering piano room, we will see a picture of the magnificent Yamaha CFX concert ground on the screen. To select another piano voice, simply tap the piano. A selection of 9 different pianos will appear on the right hand side of the screen. Select the one that you wish. To exit piano room, simply press the home button on the right hand side of the CVP Clavinova control panel. Upon exiting piano room, we see a much more conventional screen in front of us, not dissimilar to the layout of the screen on Genos and on PSR SX900. To select a voice, we do almost the same as we looked at on both of those keyboards. We simply press the voice area on the screen. In this case, it looks like a piano. Because of the extra voices here on CVP Clavinova, the main voice categories are at the top of the screen running left to right. But in each of those voice categories, there's then a subcategory to divide the voices up within that category. As an example, let's take brass and woodwind. And in brass and woodwind, you'll see brass solo, brass ensemble, sax solo, sax ensemble, and so on. I want to find a solo saxophone. So let's go into sax solo. And just as we had on Genos and PSR SX900, the first 10 voices in that category now show on the screen. To see the next page, we simply tap the triangle at the bottom right hand side of the screen to move down to the second page. Selecting a voice is simply a matter of pressing the one that you want. Mixing 2 voices together on CVP Clavinova is really easy. As you will see on the screen, there is a gold main voice section towards the bottom of the screen. To the right hand side of that, you'll see an area marked layer. That's generally greyed out as that voice is not on. You only see an active voice on the screen on CVP Clavinova, and that keeps the screen simple, easy and concise to understand. Let's now add a layer voice to the piano. Simply by tapping layer, it turns gold, and now we see on the screen 2 voices. The top one, the piano, is the main voice. The bottom one is the layer voice, and in this case, it's strings. To change either of these voices, just simply tap the appropriate main or layer voice area.
Okay, Richard, now let's get to the heart of our instruments. And the heart of any instrument is, of course, the style engine. Now, I say style engine because there's a huge amount of stuff going on. But again, back to basics. Let's talk about what a style is and how we use it.
It's where the fun begins.
It certainly is.
It's simple as that. It is absolutely where the fun begins. Playing keyboard or playing piano. It's a great hobby, of course. We know that, and it's a great profession to be in. But it could be quite solitary. You know, if you play saxophone or if you play guitar or clarinet or whatever it might be, you know, sort of bung it in the case, go down and see your mates, have a bit of a jam in the garage, you know, and there's a social thing going on because you're working with other musicians.
Yeah, in a band.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you've got a CVP Clavinova and you want to lob it in the back of the car and take, well, it's not such an easy thing to do.
Not really.
and you know, and lots of us don't actually know other musicians. You know, we play at home and that's it. And they say it can be quite a solitary thing.
Well, I remember, you know, learning to play the piano many moons ago, and of course there's me, and there's the piano, and I guess that, you know what, when you're learning to play, it's your ability that shines through. It's your technical ability, your musical ability. If you can't play, well, it doesn't sound very good. And you have to go through that kind of pain barrier to learn to play so that you can do something, so you can play something. But still, it's just you and the piano.
Yes.
And quite often when I was much younger and learning to play, I'm thinking, God, I want Elton John's band here. I want Billy Joel's band here. Not just me, I want the band as well.
And I think for lots of us, you know, it's really nice to sit on Genos or on PSI SX900 or Clavinova, of course, and sit and play something solo, play piano maybe, electric pianos, of course, guitar, whatever you want to play. But there's nothing better than having the band with you.
Yes.
And that's where the styles come in.
Yeah.
And you know, for some of us, we just want to be keyboard players, and that's absolutely, that's great. But for some of us, I know certainly for myself, when I play keyboard, I'm a frustrated band leader.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I want to, you know, in ideal world, what would I have? I'd have a 20-piece big band.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I would have a 60s group.
Yes.
And a 50s group.
Yeah.
But I'd also want them to be part of an 80s synth pop band.
Yeah.
But you can't. I mean, how many people do you know? You know,
no, impossible.
How is it these days? How easy would it be to put a full orchestra together and recreate Andre Rieu?
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
It's not. It's not.
It's
feasible.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
But on these sort of instruments now,
we can.
It is.
Yeah.
And what we're hearing with this style is a sort of evolution. I mean, some of us will remember the old organ rhythm units from 30, 40 years ago. You know, swing.
Yeah.
And you know, you had maybe 12 rhythms, all of which sounded like somebody banging two saucepan lids together.
That's right. Yeah.
And it sounded very electronic. Of course, we all know now that lots of instrumental sounds on these instruments, it sounds like the instruments. Yeah. But the drummer sounds like a drummer. Yeah. The bass player sounds like a bass player. Yeah. The guitarist who is backing you sounds like a rhythm guitarist.
It actually just, it sounds like you are part of the band. Which is great. The way it should be.
Yeah, and absolutely.
Actually, the way that I like to sit and play any of the instruments, let's take Genos for example. I sit at Genos and I think gets back to the point that you mentioned before. I'm the conductor of whatever band you want to be. So whether you want to be the big band, whether you want to be, you know, the 1960s guitar band or whatever music you like, you are the conductor of that band. And this is the band. Genos is the band. Yeah. But of course, we have to have a method, a way of controlling the band. Of course, the band leader is there with his baton and he's, you know, louder, quieter, slower, faster, so on and so forth. So we have to be in control of the instrument. Now, the one thing that our instruments isn't is telepathic. I think we're working on that. Don't say anything. So it's not telepathic. It doesn't know until you tell it what you want it to do. And of course, that's why we have the operating surface, the buttons.
The keyboard.
Of course.
Yeah. And in just the same way, if you remember back to playing, you know, it's a very, very basic piano. Let's think of, you know, some of the very, very early pieces that you play, your Little Twinkle Twinkle Little Star,
where my feet didn't even touch the pedals.
Or the little Mozart sonata, da, 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 da. You would play the melody line with your right hand, single notes.
Yeah.
It's fine. That's all you need. And in your left hand, you do the da 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 bom 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 bom. So actually, what you're doing there is you're playing some harmony notes, some little broken chords.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, those three notes, bom, 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 play them all together, bom.
And it's a chord.
It's a chord.
Yeah.
So suddenly now, the styles can say, those three notes make a chord. I know then what the player wants me to play. And the reason why we call these styles is because they emulate so many different styles of music. It can be anything literally from classical music through to 20s Dixieland through to 2020s electronic dance music.
So in a nutshell, styles actually means styles of music. And of course, on board our instruments, we literally have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these styles.
As we look at the screen, you'll notice that the styles live in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen and they're coloured in gold. Let's tap that gold area and see what happens. In just the same way that the voices looked on screen, the styles have all the different categories on the left hand side. For every one of these style categories, there'll be lots of different styles in that category. Let's take a look at one of my favourite categories, the retro pop category. As we go into retro pop, there's no question what this category is about, as the first 10 styles are all based on 80s music. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see again page 1, 2, 3 and so on. Actually, there's 5 pages of these retro pop styles. A style here that's caught my eye is one on page 2 and it's called Wonder 8-beat. Let's select this style and take a listen. Far and away the quickest way to set the instrument up so you can play a chord and enjoy to listen to these styles is actually by pressing one of the one-touch setting buttons. We'll talk about these later, but just for now, select one-touch setting number 1 towards the right-hand side of the keyboard panel. By pressing this OTS button, it sets the accompaniment ready, sets a split point, and means that the moment that you play a chord, you're ready to go. Very familiar sound there. But of course, when a band plays, they won't play the same all the way through a song. There'll be little peaks and troughs, rises and falls. Maybe verse 1, verse 2, chorus 1, chorus 2. These will change in intensity. We can replicate that with the styles on board Genos by using the style control buttons. You'll find them towards the left-hand side of the panel, marked A, B, C and D. These increase or decrease the intensity of the style, just like a real band would as it plays a tune. And just to start and finish our first piece here on Genos, let's enjoy to use one of the intro buttons. There's 3 of them, and that gives an appropriate start to every piece of music that you'll play with a style. And every style has 3 different intros. It also has 3 different endings for the end of the song. So let's put an intro together. Let's play with the style variations, and let's choose an ending. There's of course hundreds more styles to choose from, but that's a really good indication of how easy a Genos is to play with styles. The method of choosing the style on PSR SX900 is of course identical to Genos, as the screen is the same. On this instrument there is also the addition of style hardware buttons, which means that you can choose your style categories from the buttons on the left hand side of the panel. Choosing the style on CVP Clavinova is not dissimilar to the method that we've just looked at on Genos and PSR SX900. On the left hand side of the screen you will see the style selection area. Tap this area, and at the top of the screen you will see the main categories: pop and rock, country and blues, etc. Within each of these categories are subcategories, and for example here in pop and rock we have pop, rock, 70s pop, 60s pop, 50s pop. These are all separate. So again, it's making the styles easier to find, as we have more on here than we do on Genos. Let's take an example here of finding a 60s style. We'll choose the pop and rock category for the top of the screen, and then the 60s pop and rock as a subcategory. The first 10 styles that are available will show up on the screen, and I'm going to pick 60s shadowed pop, just simply by tapping it on the screen. And that is now ready to go.
There's one feature that I'd like you to talk to us about, because in fairness, you've programmed the thing.
Yep.
And it's called One Touch Settings.
So the idea behind One Touch Settings actually is many-fold. It works on lots of different levels. And I think lots of people who had keyboards maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when we still had OTS, we had One Touch Settings on there. And One Touch Settings started out life as something that essentially, if you picked, let's say, a country rhythm, you know, what sounds would you have with a country rhythm? So it would pick a sound that was appropriate to a country rhythm. And of course the rhythms eventually became styles and became more like the band rather than this. And as the voices and the overall sound of the instrument have become better and better and more accurate, of course we've had many more sounds. I mean, we're talking on Genos, probably we're into 4 figures of sounds.
Oh yes, yeah.
So the question actually that OTS answers has never changed from those very, very early keyboards back, actually way more than 25 years ago, you know, mid-80s, 40 years ago, getting on for, which is when I pick a style or a rhythm, style now, what's the right melody, what's the right sound to play the melody on? What's appropriate?
And if you were playing, for instance, a beautiful kind of love song, you wouldn't want to kind of marching brass band tuba.
Exactly right.
You want a very appropriate sound for the particular piece of music.
And of course, should you wish to do that, one, it's entirely possible.
Yeah, you can.
And secondly, we need to talk. But the premise of OTS has never changed over this long time. The basic ethos of what it does is to provide you with appropriate sounds for the style of music that you're going to play.
But it's just got a whole lot better.
Well, this is where the evolution of the quality of the styles, the evolution of the quality of the voices, has meant actually that we've had to evolve the quality of the one-touch settings. Because now, with a style such as we have on Genos and on CVP and on SX900 and subsequent ranges, there's the 4 style variations that we've just looked at when we looked at the styles. There needs to be a setting, a one-touch setting for each of those, because as we've already explained, the A, B, C, D variations of the style, basically you can think of as sort of verse 1, verse 2, chorus 1, which needs to build, chorus 2, which needs to build a bit more. So a band wouldn't play the same way all the way through a song.
No.
And equally, a singer wouldn't sing at the same intensity, level. All the way through the song. When you get to the chorus and it's a song that everybody knows, everybody joins in. So that needs to build.
So you have peaks and you have drops, loud parts and quiet
absolutely. Dark, you know, dark and light, light and shade, whatever you want to call it. The thing is now, we've gone from the one-touch settings being something that you just use when you get the instrument out of the box, because it's a quick way into being able to play it.
And in fairness, at that point, dare I say, a lot of people used that, but then thought, oh well, it doesn't quite suit what I want.
Absolutely.
And they wanted to go and search for other things.
And you know, as a professional player, on those sort of instruments that we were making, let's say 15, 20 years ago, you would maybe use the one-touch settings if you wanted to do something very quickly. But you would probably then evolve those into something else.
So it was a good starting point.
So it was a good starting point, it was a good foundation. Oh yeah, that's fine, but I'll do...
I remember doing that on Tyros.
That with it.
You would get it out of the box, you'd select a style, one-touch setting, you would play it and you'd think, maybe want something, so then you would go in search of other stuff.
But something changed actually when we did Genos, which the brilliant thing about that, the mindset, means that actually that mindset has gone in from Genos into CVP 809, 805, but also into the SXs as well, SX 900, 700, 600 even. And the ethos now is, it's not just a case of let's make a sound that's nice as you get it out the box and then you'll improve on it. It's make that concert quality. And that's the difference now. And you don't need to be a concert quality player. The whole point of this is you can still play, you can play one note. You can play your single finger chord.
And it sounds great.
And it sounds great. And a one-touch setting, and suddenly this thing just goes...
It just comes to life.
Absolutely,
It
because
really
the
does.
sounds that we can make now, and the mindset and the ethos of the way that we're making one-touch settings now, is as such that basically, I mean, we've said this phrase before. It's like being a 5-year-old and someone opening the front doors at Hamleys and saying, right, on you
Fill your
go.
boots.
Yeah, fill your boots.
Yeah.
So we've been allowed now as OTS programmers and sound technicians to make the sort of sounds that we would use in concert. I mean, bear in mind now, we're in year 4 of Genos now. And I'm kind of pretty much still using it every day.
Yeah.
And you would kind of think at that point in time, you know, it's been out over 4 years. I've been involved with it for 2 years previous to that. So, I mean, my involvement now with Genos is about 6 years. And you would think by now, you would kind of come to it and go, oh, yeah, it was that. Yeah, okay, it was that. Yeah, it was that. It was that. It's not. You come to Genos now and you play something, maybe a style that you've not played on for a long time. Yeah. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. That's great. Oh, come on.
You know what? It's I call it. It's like putting on your comfy pair of slippers.
Yeah, it is.
That's better. That's great.
So the idea behind one-touch setting actually has stayed the same over the last 25, 30 years, but it's also changed, and it's changed recently. It's changed with Genos.
Okay.
The ability to make this sound as good as it can possibly be out of the box without worrying about editing or changing or doing, downloading stuff and all of that. Yeah, of course you can do that, and that's great. If you want to do that, it's great.
Of course.
It's absolutely not an issue. Fill your boots.
Well, you can do more of that on Genos than you've ever been able to do before.
Absolutely, and of course version 2 virtually doubled what you could do on version 1 of Genos.
Of course.
So it's...
Which is, of course, a free download.
Absolutely. I mean, in times gone by, what we actually put into version 2 would have been a new instrument.
Yes.
I mean, it was a new instrument for free.
Yeah.
Basically.
You're right.
But to use the one-touch settings now, and we'll do something, let's go back to Genos.
Yeah.
And we'll do something very simply.
Okay.
And then we'll have a look at building an arrangement.
Perfect.
Just simply with the one-touch settings.
So that you're gonna have a look at Genos. So this is Genos straight out of the box.
Yeah, absolutely.
Switch it on, select a style, one-touch setting.
Off you go.
Okay, let's go.
So we've looked at voices, and we've looked at styles, and we briefly mentioned one-touch settings. So what do one-touch settings do? For me, it's one of the most important parts of any of our digital keyboards, because it brings the styles and the voices together. One-touch settings will give you 4 our most appropriate sounds for each style. Now, for lots of things, maybe for country music, those sounds will be very simple. Maybe a piano or a violin or a pedal guitar. But for more complex music, maybe for big band music or orchestral music, this is where Genos will start to mix 2 or 3 voices together and give you these really big orchestral or big band sounds or big synth sounds at the touch of a button. 4 one-touch settings, but we also have 4 style variations. So wouldn't it be nice, just to cut down the amount of buttons we need to press, if we could link those together? On Genos, you can. The button that we need to press is OTS link. And when we do that, that now links the styles and the voices together, so that when you go from A to B to C to D style variations, you get an appropriate sound for your melody line as well. It means that you get great sounds with very, very few button presses. Actually, the clue's in the title. It's one touch. Just simply change the style variation and the sound for your melody line will change as well. Let's show you. On PSR SX900, the one-touch settings work exactly the same way as they do on Genos. The OTS link button to link the 4 style variations to the 4 one-touch settings will be found on the far left-hand side of the panel beside the accompaniment button. OTS's one-touch settings work exactly the same on CVP Clavinova to the way that they do and the way that we've shown you on Genos and on PSR SX900, with one difference. To link the one-touch settings to the styles, the OTS link button is way over on the right-hand side of the panel beside the 4 OTS buttons. Our instruments are tremendously capable, and of course we'll take a more in-depth look at all the features and operations in future editions of BackStage.
Well, do you know the offcuts of the fine spruce wood that we use for the soundboards on our acoustic pianos? They are pulped down. Now, don't ask me how they do it. It's the magic of Yamaha.
It is magical.
They pulp the wood down and they actually make the speaker cones for our high-end Clavinova instruments.
And you can hear the difference.
You certainly can. It's so warm. I mean, you could say that the sound of the instrument is coming through the wood of the piano that it originally came from.
But again, the technology behind that is staggering. I mean, not only one is it giving you better sound, but secondly, it's also been as environmentally friendly as possible by getting rid of the offcuts.
Well, I also know that they actually do a few other things with the offcuts. They make the keys for our top-end instruments, for our top-end acoustic instruments.
No, I didn't know that.
And they also make some wooden toys that actually go into for sale to give back to one of the incredible charities that which is pretty incredible.
That's a great story.
Well, you know what? Here's a great BackStage bite. Yamaha's quest for richness and purity of tone led to the combining of art and science with the world's very first acoustic research room way back in 1930.
That's incredible.
It really is, 1930. And I know that one of those rooms still exists.
It does.
In fact, you know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, when we go to Japan to do research and development for lots of our products, we work in a building which is rather unfortunately called just Building 18. All the buildings just have numbers, and we're in Building 18. On the ground floor in Building 18, there is one of these ambiotic rooms, which, if you have no business in there, you cannot get in. I mean, absolutely, you're just forbidden to go in.
Wow.
So I've seen the outside doors. I know one or two of the guys have seen it.
And this is where our samples or recordings of instruments are made. So the CFX that we have on Genos and CVP and all of our other instruments, that's where the instrument was originally recorded, in that ambiotic room.
In the room. And the guy said, I've not been in that room myself, but this guy said it actually starts to play with your head after a certain amount of time in there, because there's absolutely zero resonance in there whatsoever, because of course you don't want that on the sample.
Unreal.
It's an amazing room. Talking of CFX, for recording purposes, for sampling, lots of companies use a sort of library of different piano sounds from different instruments, and it's kind of like it's just a library. It's a library of samples. The CFX sample that goes into the likes of Genos and Clavinova and Avant-Garde, it's from one piano.
Wow.
We have the one.
Yeah.
So every piano sound that you hear, this CFX sample, it's from one piano, rather than it being from a library of different. So it's kind of like the difference between having a burger and a steak.
Yeah.
You know, the steak comes from one cow.
Yes.
The burger could come from many.
Yep.
Which would you prefer?
What great analogy. Another backstage bike. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us in this edition of Yamaha Backstage. We certainly hope that you've enjoyed it just as much as we have making it. Well, we'll see you next time. So from Richard and myself, it's bye for now.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.